The Core 360 belt is the best aid to train the abdominal wall. The Core 360 is a patent-pending, first-of-its-kind training belt that helps you move, breathe, and perform better. We use the Core 360 belt with almost every patient at Winchester Spine and Sport. The biofeedback is second to none, and it's an amazing way to teach proper respiration and can be even used during higher-level movements in the gym. Teaching proper respiration is about as fun as a rash, but with the Core 360 belt, you take all the headaches away. Visit core360belt.com and use the All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Gestalt Education Show. We are back for our second repeat guest. So Dr. David Seaman, we're in his hometown, Daytona. We had a great dinner tonight. And then tonight we are talking about, you got a new damn book out.
I got a new book.
That's all you do is write nowadays, isn't it?
It's the COVID book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once I stopped traveling, I started playing more golf because no more weekend traveling. Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. Getting back into golf. And I'm like, 20 years not playing, or 15 years not playing, I came back like an older guy with an older body and a different view of how to look at it. So I wrote this book, about the amateur golfer's dilemma.
So this is
Well, I mean, you had your deep dive, obviously, into inflammation, systemic inflammation
Right.
with the diet. You had your moment in neurology, and I don't know where it all like fit in, but you had a moment where you were like all in on golf.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
before, it was cool to be all in on golf.
Like 20
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah,
Before Greg Rose started TPI, he and I were doing seminars for chiropractors.
right.
So he wasn't doing many for chiropractors back around 2000, late 90s. He was doing most of it for PGA professionals, teaching them how to assess golfers, because a lot of their inability to swing properly was because they had restrictions, like spinal restrictions or hip joints or shoulder joints. So he would teach them how to assess it and then refer appropriately. And then he developed my TPI after that, and then he went that way, and then I went into basically nutrition and neuro and teaching in chiro school.
Right.
So I have to just put this in here because the last time we were in Daytona, we came here literally just to hang out with Dave, and we played golf. And so it was the first time, Brett, you played in 10 years. So I just got to ask. It's called the Amateur Golfer's Dilemma. I just got to know, Dave, was Brett Winchester the poster child for this book?
I was.
Oh, okay. All right.
I was.
Well, Brett, I'm still going to give you a jab. How does it feel to be the poster child for a book?
Well, I mean, the only thing I remember from that day we played golf was when Taylor went to tee off. And do you remember like those worm burners he hit like
On the first hole?
Oh, God.
Right, the first hole.
That was
like
embarrassed
3 or
for it.
4, right?
Oh God,
It was two.
That
It was two.
was tough.
I actually,
that was,
yeah. I ended up shooting. I shot like 84 that day, so it was still good.
Well,
That
you were a little nervous on the first hole. I'll tell you what, the first time I played PGA National in November of 2019, which is where they play the Honda Classic, which was last weekend. And so I'm on the first tee, and I'm like literally like standing on the tee where Jack Nicklaus and all these guys. So
that's
the
kind of
course
surreal. Yeah.
the court, no fans, no nothing, just me, and the course intimidated me. That's what a golf psycho I am. Yeah.
Well, we always talk about like golf. To me, is we have internal arguments about this of like what's the most difficult sport. To me, golf is so difficult because the ball's just sitting there. It's not like you have a curveball coming at you or anything like that. But then the course changes.
Right.
The yardage just changes. The environment changes. Like all these things change. So like what do you feel like amateur golfers, like what makes this sport so damn difficult and so, I don't know, neurotic?
Addicting.
I guess.
Like,
Yeah, and addicting.
nothing's more addicting than
Right.
golf.
It is
right?
interesting. So I think the best way to look at it would be to think about t-ball for little kids. So when I started playing, now, did you guys play t-ball?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we didn't have t-ball. So we started playing, it wasn't called Little League. For us, when I was growing up, it was called C League. And we started playing when we were 8 years old. And you had pitchers, like adults didn't pitch. There was no t-ball. It was kids pitching, 8-year-olds pitching to 8-year-olds. So then they went to, in my town, adults pitching to the 8-year-olds. And then they went to t-ball. So if you're talking about T-ball, you've got the plate, and the tee is right in the middle of it, like right down the middle, just a meaty fastball sitting there, right?
Barrel the bat.
Right, it's right there. The barrel of the bat is right there. So if you're playing T-ball and an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old is skilled enough and had father or brothers, older brothers who helped them, they could hit it to right field, center field, or left field if they were schooled a little bit by their older siblings. Or they could just be like straight down the middle, right over the pitcher's head or right over second base because it's sitting right there. So the ball is stationary. T-ball is pretty easy. Golf should be easy too. The thing about T-ball is that if the plate is here, you wouldn't have the kid stand on the plate because the meat of the bat would be on the other side of the plate. You wouldn't have the kid stand way over here because the meat of the bat wouldn't be near the plate. You'd have them stand right where, when the kid swings with full extension, the meat of the bat is, the barrel of the bat is over the plate. That's how golf should be done. But everybody is taught to stand the way Bobby Jones and Ben Hogan stood. Really? You think that we could set up to the ball the way Ben Hogan or Bobby Jones did and be as effective? Those guys stand close to the plate, but they move their upper thighs, pelvis, and lower trunk out of the way of the ball so they can swing the club by. So what amateurs need to do is back up from the ball so that at full extension, we are already out of the way. So we should set up for impact.
Well, what was the advantage for Ben Hogan in that? Was there an advantage for them to stand closer that way?
They have exceptional movement skills. So think of it like this. Ben Hogan in his book said, because I as I was writing this book, I decided I got to get Ben Hogan.
Oh, and I've read it. The pictures in that book are just out of this world.
Yeah, except that you can see the plane. He talks about it kind of like the plane from the shoulder, the glass. And what you want to do is like not break that glass and swing like sort of down that line. That's almost like the downswing plane line. But when you stand like that, if you were to extend your arms, you would put the club, the driver in that case, almost 6 inches into the ground, which means you have to move your body out of the way so you can get the meat of the club head on the ball. But if you can't move out of the way, you should just simply move back from the ball, because you can make up for your lack of rotational movement skills by just standing back further. That is never taught to golfers by any pro, any therapist, doesn't matter who they are, because it's like the setup. Bobby Jones said, you don't want to be reaching for the ball. Well, guys like us, that's what we should be doing. I mean, think about it. T-ball, you want to extend fully, full release of like all your momentum right at impact. You're reaching for the ball. Now they're reaching for the ball too, but they're moving their body out of the way, so they're creating a false reach. That's never taught to anybody. So everybody who plays golf stands too close to the ball. So everybody needs to move back based upon their rotational movement skills. And you know this based upon just doing a video. You take your phone, videotape yourself from behind the ball, and then look at what happens. And then you just do a screenshot, set up, and then impact, and see where your head is. You can just do a screenshot, put it on a PowerPoint, see where your head is at setup, and see where it is at impact, and almost everybody is high. They stand up, early extension. Yeah. So you need to stand back as far as you need to so you do not move your head above your setup line where your head is. So for some people, it's a couple inches. For others, it's like me, it's like Mo Norman, all the way back.
So you have Mo Norman, then you have Hardy, who have kind of promoted this, and now kind of the contemporary would be like DeChambeau.
DeChambeau. The other thing about DeChambeau, which is kind of interesting, because when I, back in 1998, I cut all of my, so I played with a 1-iron, 2-iron, right on down the line. Like no one can hit a 1-iron. Well, I couldn't either until I cut it down. So when DeChambeau was in diapers, I cut down my 1-iron, 2-iron, 3-iron, 4-iron, 5-iron to be my, or maybe even 6-iron to be my 7-iron length. I kept my 8, 9 wedges, their length, but all my longer irons from 7-iron to 1-iron were the same length. So before DeChambeau did that, I did that because it just made sense mathematically, right? I mean, the loft of the club determines the flight. not the length of the club. The problem when I did it was that the heads of the old 1 irons, 2 irons, they were lighter. So the swing weight was maintained based upon the longer shaft. So I just added a bunch of lead tape to it. But now you can buy single length clubs, which I think everybody should do unless they're completely committed. I mean, think about this. You could say, okay, so you have 10 irons, all the swing weights are perfect, the clubs are the same length, same exact swing. Would you say, well, that's dumb? I would rather have 10 different clubs, 10 different lengths, 10 different lie angles. Really? Who do you think you are, Bobby Jones?
Yeah.
Right? So it's just mathematically, it makes more sense to do what DeChambeau has done. The problem with DeChambeau is that he's become bodybuilder long drive guy, and his kinesiology has been lost in his power. So people say, well, whatever. Or they'll say, well, his wedges are too long. Really? How about choking down a little bit or choking up, whatever. Right? Choke it a little bit. So so it's just a ridiculous argument. So I think that everybody should stand back further from the ball to make sure that once they're at impact, their head is not going above the line that would have been placed there at address. And then use single length irons, unless you don't want to. But I think that's the best way, because then you just need one basic swing to work with. Why have 10? That's why it's also more difficult. Imagine having 10 different baseball bats of different lengths. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You got one bat that suits you. So when I was a kid playing Little League, we had like 30-ounce bats, 31s, 32s. The 8-year-old swung like 29s, and the 12-year-old swung 32s or 31s. Well, you have one bat, and you stand back from the plate to get the barrel of the bat, the meat of the bat over the plate. Same thing for golf.
And why would you not try to mimic your position at address that like you are at impact? I mean, it only makes sense. Like, why would that be two completely different positions?
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
And the reason why it's like a doctrinal thing. So several years ago, when the whole issue with motion versus out of place anatomy, the PTs were stuck with a little bit of that too. I've read articles about PTs like, well, it's really more about motion integrity and improving movement rather than asymmetrical issues with structure. So both PTs and DCs have been locked in that structure thing as opposed to a function thing. So you just get trapped in an ideology, and then there it is, and you got a guy like Bobby Jones and Ben Hogan playing their game, and then the only guy who would be otherwise like that, set up his impact, would be Mo Norman, who was Savant-like. He had what's called acquired Savant syndrome, and he was odd.
He was an outlier.
He was a total outlier. And so like, that guy's weird. We'll ignore him, even though when he would go, like when the Canadian Open would take place and the U.S. PGA Tour guys would go up to Canada and play and do the tournament, Mo Norman would be pulled out of the stands and given a clinic to all the U.S. PGA Tour guys. And they would sit there going, there's a picture, I think it was either in, it was New York Times or Wall Street Journal, a picture of Mo Norman with Ben Crenshaw, major tour winner,
great putter,
major tournament winner, Nick Price, major tournament winner, Nick Faldo, Fred Couples, and then another a writer. So these four of the greatest golfers, in this past the senior tour era now. Watching Mo Norman go, how does this guy do this?
I know, like they're not like turning their nose to him. They're like, wow, this guy is kind of interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So what the problem with watching Mo Norman is that he had this. It was a very straight leg setup and a bit more hunched forward and really extended.
Yeah, here.
Like that. Yeah. Plus, like very straight looking legs. So it was just an awkward look. But once he started to move, it was just majestic looking. Particularly his younger swing was unbelievable.
No one squared up a golf ball like he did. Nobody did.
Nobody.
Yeah.
He could call where it was going to go, where it would bounce. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And in Daytona, actually, Daytona is where Mo Norman was. Actually, he lived in Ormond Beach for like 45 winters. So 6 months out of the year, Mo Norman lived here in Daytona. And all of his buddies from back then, they're all here. And they can tell you unbelievable Mo Norman stories. One of the guys who played golf with him the most is the current head pro over at the New Smyrna Beach Golf Club, the municipal course. He played hundreds of rounds with Mo Norman. He watched Mo Norman over at Riviera. It's a small little private. It's been owned by the same family since 1953. When Gary was 7 years old, he lived over there, and he used to go to the range and watch Mo Norman hit balls. And then 10 years later, he was Mo Norman's best local buddy and basically played with Mo Norman. Yeah. So they all said, never saw that guy miss a shot. Ever. I asked Gary, who's played hundreds of rounds, he goes, you ever seen him miss a shot? Never missed a shot. It was so uncanny and unbelievable. So what did he do? Set up for impact. He actually said that. He goes, in a 1994 video that was done by Craig Shanklin, who's also still in town, who owned 2 courses back in the 80s, I guess it was. He goes, I'm the only golfer who sets up for impact, where I look the same at setup and impact. And why would that not be followed? It makes no sense to me at all.
So, I mean, the theory that's kind of promoted is that, Mo Norman, Hardy, others, they are promoting this single plane golf swing. So, but after hanging out with you a little bit tonight, I don't know that you 100% buy into the single plane, or you...
No, because ultimately, if you're set up with your arms extended, which is how you should be at impact.
Right.
Now, not everybody needs to do that, but if the best ball striker in history did that, it's probably a good place to start.
Yeah.
Right? It would just make sense. Except that when you're like this, the one plane would be back like this and right and down, but you can still go up like this and do a loop if you wanted to. It all depends. Jim Furyk, right? You could set up for impact and do Jim Furyk. So
Raymond Floyd, other
Ray
ones.
Floyd, right? Ray Floyd had
Matt
a weird.
Wolf now.
Well, Matt Wolf though sets up close like everybody else and jumps backwards. Like most of the pros now, they actually jump away from the ball. Their momentum is so intense with their leg action since Tiger, they actually go airborne at impact, or their left foot, their lead foot, because most of them are righties. Watch the most unbelievable current touring acrobat golfer, as I call them. There's a chapter in there, but PGA Tour players are golfing acrobats. The most unbelievable is Lexi Thompson. She's like 5'11" or something like that. She became a pro at age 15. She's that much of like a
Savant.
I mean, yeah, it's just, Hogan said, if only amateurs could rotate their hips better and start their swing with their hips, they would do much better. He didn't realize that only 1% of golfers can rotate their hips the way he's talking about and stand at address the way he's talking about. So the rest of us have to back up. Well, she doesn't have to. She swings and she's literally airborne and she's fully extended at impact or slightly after impact because she has movement skills that dwarf us mere mortals.
Right.
Well, think of it like this too. Certain people, when you teach your seminars, like you had 100 people this weekend, you can pick out who is skilled and who is not skilled, right? So those who are not skilled, they should have a different approach potentially in terms of how they would use more of their body weight. I mean, everyone should use their body weight, but
right.
Those who are less skilled should be much more efficient with their body weight rather than dexterity, right? So you have to modify the skills based upon the person's coordination.
Yeah.
So PGA Tour players are smaller than 1% of the golfing population in terms of their movement skills.
So let's start with takeaway. So what are some of the thoughts? And you and I over the years, we've had a lot of good conversations about, golf is an initiation sport. So a lot of times that brings into the waggle and other things because, when you're starting from zero, it is very difficult to,
right.
Initiate this movement. Kevin Na, other people have really struggled with, when the pressure's on, being able to initiate the golf swing. So what are your thoughts? I mean, what is the first thing that you think about as the club is being taken away from the ball?
I think Lee Trevino. The dude's always moving, right?
Uh-huh.
His feet are moving and he just plants and goes.
Right.
So I think that for people who struggle with that, they should watch David Lee. He calls it gravity golf. I don't think it's really gravity. I think it's just momentum transfer. But I understand why he says it because it can look so effortlessly if you move properly sequentially. So he's very much being actively moving. Like you saw me when we were playing, my feet were going and then I planted and
right.
And went. Now my swing is too quick, so that's my problem. but that is still the best way to start, because if you're moving, it's easier to create a motion from movement rather than
pure isolation.
Pure isolation.
We talked about that in Justin, actually.
Yeah.
Like, to be good at manipulation.
Right.
Like, no one just stays
Sits there.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you're.
And that's why poseology is so stupid.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we called it poseology when I went to NYCC back in the 80s. And I remember thinking, like, how do you do anything if you're kind of stuck in this weird posture? So it's much better to be moving. And Lee Trevino was probably the most active
he had a very
mover.
active.
Very
Sam
active.
Snead.
Yep.
What do you think? You know who Harvey Pinnick is, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, they asked Harvey, they said, of all and he's considered to be the best golf instructor,
Right.
since
Ben
the beginning of time.
Crenshaw's guy, the whole thing,
Yeah. So, and they said, what is the one tip that you would recommend that, like, would fix more problems with the golf swing? Harvey said, I would tell them to put a little bit of pressure on the inside part of their right heel on their right-handed golfer as they're taking the club back.
Right.
And that sets a lot of things into motion. One thing that prevents is, so as you're taking the club back, it forces you to keep yourself in a little bit of calcaneal eversion.
Right.
That way you're not like flying out into inversion.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so from that position, then you go into, so most golfers are right-handed, so that would be the right would be the rear leg. So you have the weight bearing on the medial arch, and you move it easily into right internal hip rotation. And from there, move into left internal hip rotation. And that should happen first, and everything else should then follow thereafter. The problem is that when you think about, if you look at, the downswing in golf takes less than a third of a second, and nobody watches foot action or hip action. They all watch shoulder, arm, club, ball goes flying. Now for the last month or two, since I've really, because a couple chapters in the book, I focus heavily on keeping your heels flat at impact, particularly the front heel, because most golfers, amateurs, we don't rotate from our hips properly. We actually do almost like a hip thrust and stand up, and then have this weird combination of movements, like we have forward momentum while we're swinging in a arc. Pros, they move rotationally from their hips back and forth while they're swinging with their arc. So it's a very consistent movement that pros make, a very inconsistent movement that amateurs make. So I'm working on this. I'll do some videos on this. I think the way to look at it is swing from heel to heel in a semi-squatted position. If you look at and anyone can do this, anyone can do this. You go to YouTube and put in Tiger Woods. It doesn't make any difference who you look at. And you can slow it down at impact, and you can see they're in a semi-squatted position. You can't rotate your pelvis if you're extended very easy. You have to be in a semi-squat position so you can use your femurs and your femoral heads to rotate within the acetabula. Amateurs are extended as opposed to squat.
Double extra rotation.
Well,
the hips.
Yeah. Well, you go internal and then.
But in what you're saying is the double squat. You get like a little.
It's like at impact they're like squatted with their pelvis facing to different degrees toward the target once impact, and then follow through is when their right heel comes off and they face the target. But it happens so fast you cannot see with the naked eye, and none of the golf announcers even talk about that. Because all they talk about is where does he get his power from? Well, he does his wrist this way or his wrist that way. Do you think any golf announcers? I mean, Nick Faldo does announcing now. He won major tournaments. Do you really think he knows anatomy and physiology? They don't.
No,
they don't.
And the other thing,
they know how to play, and they can see certain things, and they know how to do certain shots, but they don't know the mechanics in a fashion that they could help us as amateurs who do not have that elite, literally innate movement skill. Like you can look at little kids on the range at any course where they have the little kid thing, the parents bring the little kids out. I've seen this at a couple of different courses. I'm like, man, that kid's got skills.
I talked about this today.
That kid sucks. Yeah. That kid's amazing. And
you can already tell.
Yeah, you can tell.
Even like at the age of 3, if you look at Tiger in the Johnny Carson show, when you see the most perfect golf swing you've ever seen. Yeah. So how do you deal with, if we're looking at any rotational sport, whether it's baseball, throwing or hitting, golf, punching, kicking, the one thing all these athletes are amazing to be able to do, they will keep themselves in the transverse plane.
Right.
The mortals, they will like cheat themselves into the coronal plane in an attempt to try to get rotation.
Or the sagittal plane.
Or the sagittal, early extension, for example.
Yeah.
So then what are some things you can do to help like the amateur golfer keep themselves in the rotational plane, prevent themselves from sliding in the coronal plane?
Well, that's why setting up like Mo Norman, I think, is the best.
Right.
Because at that point there, you're already in your semi kind of like seated on a bar stool position, and you're fully extended. Now, if you stand up, you're going to probably whiff the ball. You'd have to move forward. So you want to already be set in that semi-squat position at address, as opposed to, well, you are otherwise, but you have to move your body out of the way.
It's a pretty good rule of thumb, put your arms back there, that the shaft of the club and your forearms are making a straight line. Is that a...
Yeah, pretty close to that.
Right.
Just all you have to do, actually. So what you all should do is just go to YouTube and put in Mo Norman, Craig Shankland. Now imagine a golf pro named Shankland, right? I'm like, God, that's kind of like Seaman.
I was just gonna say.
My cousin was a pilot for Delta. He was Captain Seaman in the cockpit. And I'm like, dude, how do you like come to Shankland?
That's tough. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean,
we can talk like that in this podcast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's been more said.
Yeah. So I think you should watch that video. It's with Mo Norman. It's actually Craig, who still teaches in Daytona at LPGA. He owned 2 courses here, and he doesn't anymore. One was called Hidden Lakes in New Smyrna Beach. The other one was called Royal Palm. It sounds royal, right? It's a 9-hole course, and right off the beach. And when Craig owned it, looked a whole lot nicer than now. And that is where Mo Norman did this interview with Craig for 5 hours. Mo Norman was 65 years old and hit balls for 5 hours straight. Imagine hitting balls for 5 hours straight now at 44 or 30 or 62 almost. Right? It's freaking brutal. So, because his movement was so pure, it was effortless. So Mo was wearing green pants and his plaid yellowish and reddish kind of shirt. And if you listen to Craig's questions and what Mo does, you'll see set up for impact. That is absolutely the best place to start for everybody. And if you want to go closer, go right ahead. But you have to have the movement skills to get your torso, pelvis out of the way so you can swing your arms freely. They call it release the club versus this chicken wing thing.
Right.
A lot of amateurs, they chicken wing because they're too close to the ball and they can't rotate out of the way, so they chicken wing and they hit the ball 150 yards with a $1,000 Exios driver. Right? It's a great driver. Yeah, I got my Walmart special I can blow up by you because I stand further back. Yeah. So absolutely right. Setting up with your arms straight. And doing it right now on video like this is a little bit more difficult to see. I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Amateur Golfer's Dilemma, and it shows all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Very simple. Yeah. And I didn't sign up for advertisement, but they monetize it anyway. So it's not me doing it, just so that you know. I wanted to be free without these annoying commercials.
Well, speaking of equipment, actually, Greg Rose, I heard him say something that I thought was so amazing. He said, if you can't hit a golf ball flush 8 out of 10 times, like your equipment at that point,
irrelevant.
It doesn't even
it's
matter.
Irrelevant.
Yeah. So
completely irrelevant.
Until you can do that, then
right.
the equipment, ironically, doesn't
right.
even,
So for me, I just got the single length irons because I did that for myself in 1998. And so it became popularized because of DeChambeau. And then I went online and I found the guy who's been doing it. His name is David Lake. It's called oneiRongolf.com. You just stand up, you measure with your hands in anatomical position from about right here, and then he just sends you your clubs, all the same length, all the same weight, and you have 30 days to try it. I don't make any money from it. I'm just saying it's a great deal, and you can see if it works for you. Very simple, very easy.
So, I mean, I think what we're here you're saying, Dave, like, do you think golf has, like, been made way more difficult?
Oh, my God. Insane.
Yeah.
Plus all of, like, the history and the tradition and all this stuff that goes into it. And then it's like you're so afraid to even take the club back for fear of insulting some dead golf pro. Oh my God, it's horrible. Yeah. Oh yeah. They've made it way complicated.
So at the end of the day now, Dave, you've given us some awesome tips for amateur golfers when it comes to irons, drivers, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to score. Right. So what about those that want to score better? I understand hitting more fairways, hitting
Right.
more greens is going to allow you to score better. But at the end of the day, I mean, short game,
short
club
game,
management,
right,
stuff like
yeah.
that. So, what do we get into that in the
No.
Seaman?
This book is about getting rid of error factors. It's not about how to play. So golf pros, I mean, they don't know anything about anatomy and physiology unless they actually took a course. I mean, most of them went to college to play golf, right? And they didn't make the tour. Now they're club pros or teaching pros. So to like listen to one of those guys talk about supination, pronation, move here, move there, all this, it's much better to go to one of these guys with skills based upon getting rid of all of the error factors that you can, and then have them teach you to score. Because they're fantastic at short game. They're fantastic at
Course
strategy
management.
and course management.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the average amateur sucks so bad because they got 10 different length irons with different lie angles, which require different planes simultaneously, and they can't hit the ball straight, so they're concerned about that or distance, and they get to the green and they're completely screwed because they don't know how to play around the green. That's where pros are the best, and they would have a whole lot more fun because sitting there watching some schlub, shank shots after shot after shot, or toe them this way or that way or whatever. And they're 5'8" and they have a 46-inch driver where they've got no business swinging a 46-inch. They should be swinging like a 42. Jack Nicklaus, for most of his career until the modern day, swung a 42.5-inch driver. Why should any of us swing a longer one?
Right.
It doesn't even make any sense. So the shorter the driver, the easier it is to square at impact because there's less of a lever arm to deal with through impact.
So on average, how far back do you think the average golfer needs to stand back? Are we talking 3 inches, 4 inches?
It's completely individual based upon taking a shot. Like so you take your phone and you do slow-mo. And you have your friend, or you set up on a tripod thing and shoot it down the line, and you want to shoot it on your body line. You want to be able to see where your glutes are and where your head is. So you put a line on the glutes, put a line on the head, and you want to move back as far as you need to so that your glutes and your head your head doesn't go above the line and your glutes don't go further away from the line. You want to go as far back as you can to be within those confines, and that's the way you avoid early extension without any worries about weird exercises and you'll never be able to do it unless you can.
Body limitations.
Yeah. So it's very, very much individual. And I would say I think that people should probably start like Mo Norman, who was the best ball striker ever. So that video that Craig Shanklin did at Royal Palms or whatever it was called up in Flagler Beach. Mo Norman they did that video because he was anointed in 1994 at the PGA Teacher Summit as the greatest ball striker ever. Everybody should start like that. The best ever. Now, Hogan might have been on par with Mo Norman, but really not. Mo Norman didn't hit hooks or anything. He hit straight balls.
Right.
So most of us are not pro movers. We should be standing back like Mo Norman.
Right.
Without worrying about all the different elbow here, club here, do this, single plane. Just stand further away and then put the line here and on the glutes and see where you are. And go back as far as you need to go so that you can swing the club easily without any perturbations of the body. It's that simple. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be good or great, but it'll mean that you'll have a chance to suck less. And that's what golf really is.
At the end of the day, that's all we want.
Even pros talk about it. They say you want your mistakes not to be horrific.
Right.
Well, most amateur golfers too, myself one of them, you're okay if you don't score well. You just want to hit the ball. I mean, if you're going out with your buddies, because I always use the example of NHL players. Because it's this similar motor pattern, all NHL players can murder golf balls, but that doesn't necessarily make them great golfers because there's a lot that goes into being a good golfer.
Right. But the average person in the Daytona area, because there's lots of golfers here in Florida, wherever else, Florida's all year round, but up north is 6 to 8 months out of the year. They all want to be able to get the ball further into the fairway, have a better shot at the green, but they do want to murder it, but they do want to keep it in play. And if you stand further away from the ball, you have a much better chance of keeping it in play. And then you can take lessons from pros to teach you how to score.
Right.
Which is from 100 yards and in.
At dinner tonight, kind of a new thing that you were kind of talking a lot about, and you're starting to highlight is swinging from your heels. So, what do you mean by that? And like, what are your thoughts on when you're saying swinging from your heels? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll just stand up. How about that? Can I stand up?
This is a video. We're good.
Yeah. So if you think of it like this. My heels are here. It's just this to this. I'll show you guys first. You can see it from behind too. If I'm here, I'm on my right heel, and I go this way, you can see I'm on my heel and off my toes, right? So the video. So back, heel, I'm on my right heel, internal rotation, and then through, and now I'm on my lateral arch and heel. And so that's from the heels. What amateurs do, so heels. Amateurs do this. Toes, back and up, because they're too close to the ball. So heels, if you look at any pro slow-mo, the best guy to watch now is Patrick Rogers on the PGA Tour. He goes back and he hits the ball, and after he hits, his heel then comes up off of his rear heel, and he's on his lateral arch and heel. Amateurs are like this, or, well, they're like, they go this way as opposed to this way. So
instead of rotation,
you should be in a transverse plane with your hips, and your shoulders gonna be a little bit this way, so you got two different planes going at once. You got this 45-degree angle with your arms and your shoulders, and the perfectly horizontal transverse plane with your hips. The problem is if you're too close to the ball, you end up doing this. If you can't get out of the way pros do. So if you back up, then it's easier to go heel to heel. Anyway, that's the best I can kind of.
So what do you think about like length of backswing, things like that? I mean,
all individual.
Yeah.
It all depends upon, like Mo Norman, if you watch his Craig Shanklin video, Mo was 65 then.
It's so limited kind of in his
Limited.
backswing, yeah.
Now, if you go to a website called Finish to the Sky, it's a Canadian PGA guy, he's retired. His name was Greg Laverne. He came down to Daytona in 74-ish and was basically spent like 8 years every winter for 6 months with Mo and sometimes up in Canada. And so he learned how to move like Mo. What the heck was the question again?
Like the bats.
Backswing. Yeah. So
length of backswing.
Yeah. So on Greg's website, Finish to the Sky, there is a screenshot. It wasn't the entire video because it was like the reel. I don't know what that's called anymore. Do you remember the old films where they rolled them? Yeah, that thing, the rolling film. So a local pro. Get this. This is really interesting. So Mo Norman grew up in Kitchener, Canada. There are a couple golf courses there. I forget the name of the one that he caddied at. But the assistant pro at this golf course is a teaching pro who lives in Daytona Beach to this day. Yeah. So his name is Lawson. What the heck's his last name? No, I can't. Oh, geez, I can't forget now. Lawson Mitchell. Nice guy, like 80 years old. He took this video of Mo when he was like 34. And Mo had this much longer backswing than he does in his older videos. So you want to go back as far as you can, so as long as you don't lose all your posture when you're swinging. Never try to be like Fred Couples if you're John Rahm.
Right.
Right? You need to be who you are.
Different configuration.
But either way, though, all those guys are on their heels. It's actually stunning now. I've been watching ESPN Plus for like the past couple months with as a tour started again, and you can kind of like stop it and you can screenshot it. So I'm screenshotting the heel action of these guys. It's unbelievable. If you can force yourself not to watch the shoulders, arms, and club, and watch the feet, you'll learn so much about the golf swing. It's all in the feet. If your feet are screwed up, if you're on your toes, not in your heels, you're going to be all over the place. Because now you have forward momentum with the swing arc, as opposed to being stable with the swing arc, and stable in terms of the transverse plane for hip motion versus this hip thrust and a swing arc.
So as you kind of reconfigured your own golf swing, has it changed the flight of the ball? And the reason I ask that is Hank Haney, who's a golf pro, he always tells a story of like when he's assessing a new golfer, he never looks at the swing. What he looks at is like the flight of the ball. So, like he can learn a lot by just kind of watching like what the ball's doing. So in my own struggles with golf, like I've learned, like as I've made changes, like you can definitely like start to notice like, a change in the flight of the ball. Have you noticed that as you've reconstructed your golf swing?
Well, I can tell you, I can swing heel to heel very well on the range. When I go on the course, like I don't know my distances well on the course, so I go back to a little spazzy on the course.
Ranger Rick.
It's problematic. Now I'm going to translate it, but learning how to go heel to heel is like, I don't know, learning how to swim and never having swam before. Yeah. So it's a brand new thing. It's a brand new movement pattern. But when I practice heel to heel and I get the proper internal rotation, backswing, internal rotation, forward swing, I mean, the ball flight is exceptional. But when I get on the course, I get a little bit more aggressive and worried because I'm worried about where the ball's going, the hazards, and everything else. So it takes time. This is why if you haven't played a whole lot, or if you have a child and you want to teach them properly, you teach them you should read the book basically, and avoid all of the problems that PGA teach. Because the subtitle of the book is the Amateur Golfer's Dilemma: How PGA Professionals Unknowingly Prevent Amateurs from Breaking 80, 90, and 100. Because if you stand close to the ball like Ben Hogan and Bobby Jones and all the guys on the PGA Tour, they have exceptional movement skills that we don't have.
Yeah, they're gifted.
They are truly gifted. And you saw, like when you have 100 students in an adjusting class, you can tell who the studs and studettes are, and who the ones who should do more McKenzie or activator or blocking. No, but I mean, really, if you're not coordinated, you don't want to do very, very coordination demanding movements.
That was savage.
What's that? But that's true though.
Yeah.
Here, look. Here, grab my wrist. This is like this is a woman's wrist, dude. This is like dude, really, seriously, this is like
a very manly.
Very, here, how about this? This is like, seriously?
Those are Taylor ankles there.
Seriously?
That was low.
That's right, you are a skinny dude also. So like,
I'll bust your face though.
but so that day we play golf, I'm like, all right, the second skinniest guy, male in America. So for guys like us, like you're not like wiry, super strong. Neither am I. So for me to be like moving 300-pound guys around, I would have been crippled if I stayed in practice, just because it's not my thing.
You can still do it though, because I'm still healthy.
I know. I understand. You're only 30. So one needs to honestly assess who they are as a mover, and that is for golf or adjusting, and then modify the approach accordingly based upon your movement skills. And that's what this book is about. It's about getting rid of all of the error factors that exist as a consequence of us mere mortals trying to swing like Bobby Jones and Ben Hogan without the skills.
If Hardy Pinnock said, put a little bit of pressure on the inside part of your right heel, what is besides standing further away from the ball, is there any other like tip or cue that you would recommend?
That is perfect.
Yeah.
And then really, if you take a medicine ball without a golf ball and just stay on the inside of your right foot and then roll out onto your lead foot, back and forth from hip to hip and get that feeling. The brain needs to have that feeling. I played with a guy, today's Saturday, right? Mm-hmm. Yesterday, guy I met 2 years ago when the whole COVID thing started because I was playing a lot of golf. He has this perfect wedge shot. Like he blows his drive and he has a chip out. He's got like 115 yards in. He has this perfect wedge shot. He sits in the cart and he goes, because I was talking about the heel. He goes, I felt my right heel that time. I go, was this the first time? He goes, first time. I go, so you've been playing golf 40 years and this was your first proper swing? And I'll tell you what, I didn't see his feet, but his upper trunk moved beautifully and the ball this is the back corner, the back right pin placement in a Donald Ross domed green, dropped in there, 400-yard par 4 with hazards everywhere around the green. He's the only guy who got a par. Yeah, and he hit this, he goes, that was the most perfect swing I ever made. And he goes, I never felt my right heel on the ground at impact before.
So is it as simple as then feeling like keep your heel more on the ground? I mean, is it that simple?
It's that simple,
okay.
But it's difficult to do with a golf club in hand if you're trying to if you can hit your 7-iron 150 if you're doing that, you may only hit your 7-iron 130. And then what happens, you start to be more aggressive with your upper body. So the best thing is to take a 2-pound medicine ball and so you have something to hold on to. So you can get some momentum, right? You're 2 pounds here, out a little bit, back this way, you'll get momentum, backwards, forwards. You swing from hip to hip, heel to heel. Inside, lateral, so medial arch on the backswing, lateral arch. And it just happens naturally. You take the club, and all hell breaks loose. So that's why you want to learn the movement pattern without a club in your hand.
Right. Can you give us a little bit of teaser on some of the new thoughts that you were kind of talking about at dinner with like the shoulders and like the tilt angle?
Yeah, I thought about this, for a while. Like, why can't I do this? And then I realized because I wasn't going heel to heel, hip to hip, but it's because when you're in a semi-squat position, you're moving in the transverse plane with your hips, but your arms and shoulders are moving in more of a, I don't know what this plane. It would be sort of in the sagittal plane with it's the y-axis is up this way, right? Y. Yeah. So you got so you're sagittal with a bit of a y-axis. So you got like a 45-degree tilt with your shoulders, but you got to move this way with your hips. And if you watch pros, they all do that. We don't, because golf pros never tell us to learn to move heel to heel, hip to hip before you start taking a club and like hacking at it with your shoulders. The second you go with your shoulders first, you're up in hip flexion, and you'll never experience the hip, never experience the heel.
Which, I mean, I'm thinking about right now after you gave the analogy of the tee. So many people, including myself, like if I had hit a baseball off a tee, I could do that amazingly well. Well, that's essentially golf, but just 2 feet lower.
Right.
So, I mean, how can it be that different?
It's not.
Right.
It's not. It's because when you're doing tee-ball, you set up so the barrel of the bat is the meat of the bat. Right, exactly. And that's not what people do with golf.
Okay. Yeah.
Plus, with baseball, your shoulders are essentially in the coronal plane also, right? So your shoulders are in coronal plane, arms are coronal plane, I mean, essentially, and your hips are. The difference with golf is your hips are, but you're hunched over a little bit. Right. So it's 2 different planes of movement taking place simultaneously.
Yeah, so you're having to like reconcile.
So for baseball, you have to think low and inside, right? Low and inside to hit it to center field, not left field, because left field's OB on the golf course.
Right.
Love it. What a cool thoughts, man. I can't wait to unpack a lot of this. And obviously go to Amazon, search David R. Seaman. You got 7 books on Amazon now?
Seven books, yeah.
Not just this book, all the books.
Right. So, I mean, if you guys missed our first 2 episodes with Dave we did one on neurology and one on nutrition. Now, apparently, he's the golf guy. So,
I'm not the golf guy. I'm the error reduction guy in golf.
I love it.
Because you see, because golf pros, they feel like we're moving into their domain. I mean, Greg Rose is right about that. But kinesiology is not a course that those guys took. I mean, to think about baseball, where your shoulders are in the coronal plane, your arms are too, and your hips are, and then in golf, shoulder plane is different, hips are different. They don't think about that. It just doesn't. They never tell you to work on your feet in golf, and your foot movement, and your foot placement, how your feet should feel. It's all about the club head position here and all these other things that are really secondary, because it's the feet that ground reaction forces determines the most distal lever that we utilize in any sport. All right?
I love it. Well, at the end of this video, I'm going to put a swing or a video of Brett and I swing, and we'll vote who does it best. So
that was a year ago.
You can savage me on the first tee, but I'll still beat your butt every single time. So, Dave, thanks for entertaining us on golf.
Hey,
I can't wait to play with you again.
That's right.
We got a course in Jupiter at the end of the year, and I told Dave we're playing. So we're going to get the sticks back out. So appreciate your Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for educating us always.
Appreciate
it. As always, guys, stay tuned. We got more coming. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Gestalt Education Show. If you liked it, share it, subscribe to it, send it to your friends, send it to someone that needs to hear this message. We really want everyone to be able to tune in and get the best clinical advice that they can, which we're hoping that we're giving to you with these special guests. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, or if you have any suggestions on upcoming conversations, let us know. For a list of our upcoming courses, we're adding them all the dang time. So go to gestaltedu.com, click on courses, and they'll all be right there for you. All right, have a good day.